We also have a thing called eRx, which is a prescription exchange, which I'm going to talk to you mostly about today, as well as running things like SafeScript in Victoria for the state health department, and then a thing called the National Data Exchange, which is the back end for all of the other jurisdictions, what we call real-time prescription monitoring. So we do a few different things, but what I'm going to talk to you mostly about today is about eprescribing, which is not something you can do right now, but it's something that's coming. And particularly in the specialist, and I think most of you guys are specialist sort of focused, yeah? In that specialist sort of area where for a long time many specialists are just handwritten scripts and that sort of stuff. And they've been moving around, some of them use iPads, some of them they're much more mobile than GPs traditionally would be. Some of this e-prescribing stuff could have really good application in those settings where you don't want to have your physicians walking around with a printer for their scripts or a script pad. Some of this innovation will allow you to ultimately get rid of all that stuff and just have your doctors walking around with iPads or whatever it is that they want to use, if they're technologically inclined. They don't have to be. All right, so how many of you today do scripts with a little barcode on it like that? Anyone have those printed on their scripts? Anyone using their computers to generate scripts? Yeah, okay, good, excellent. So what that barcode represents, that's an eRx barcode, and there's two prescription exchanges in Australia. eRx is about 90% of the traffic, and then there's another one called MediSecure, which makes up the rest of it. What that barcode represents for those that print it on there is a bit of a patient safety measure, because when your doctors write prescriptions today, whether they're handwritten or printed, if they don't have a barcode on them, when they get to the pharmacy literally has to stand there and type out the information on the script. And in doing so, we see transcription errors happening from time to time, not often, but from time to time. And that can affect, obviously, patient safety if the people get the wrong things or if the directions are incorrectly sort of typed out. So that's what we have today. And that's the system. We've done billions of transactions in that way over the last 10 years. That's the system that's going to form the basis of what we're calling e-prescribing. And this is not our system, this is a system that the federal government has been working with all of the different states and jurisdictions on. Now, what we have today is this one on the left-hand side, which is that paper legal script. So it's only a legal document when your doctors print out that script and they sign the script and it has all the requisite information to make it a script. That's a paper legal document. And in order for the pharmacy to dispense that and supply the medicine to the patient, a couple of things have to happen. Ideally, it's got the barcode on there so that at least we have that patient safety sort of tick going on. But they also have to be in possession of that actual physical piece of paper in order to supply the medicine. The new option that's coming, and that will still remain, but the new option that's coming is quite a simple change, but actually when you play it out, it gets a bit complicated. And that's that the legal document, if the patient chooses, can now be the data set, so that electronic data that's sitting up there in the prescription exchange, rather than a piece of paper. And that has a range of implications, and we'll talk through kind of the workflow so you get a sense of how this is actually going to play out for patients. But fundamentally what that means is that the pharmacist doesn't have to receive a piece of paper from you or from the patient in order to supply the medicine. They simply need to be able to access that legal document so that they can download it from the exchange and dispense it in a legal way. So you can probably almost immediately see this opens up all sorts of opportunities for you guys with iPads and telehealth solutions and all those sorts of things, where traditionally probably you as the staff that support the doctors in the process do a lot of admin around trying to get scripts to different pharmacies, follow up owing scripts, following up all the rubbish that happens around a paper system, just like it happened when we had checkbooks. There are some people in the room that will remember when we had checkbooks. I found one in my filing cabinet the other day, hadn't used many checks. But checks are a thing of the past, right? We're still going to have paper scripts, but this is the coming wave of what people will start to do. So I'm going to talk you through how it's going to work, but that's the most important thing to have in your head, is that there's now going to be two options. One is to have a paper legal script, or the other is to have a paperless script. And we're talking about the community model here, so that paperless script is the legal document is up there in the cloud. And there's two ways in which the patient can then provide access to their pharmacist to that legal document, assuming they've chosen to have an electronic script or a paperless script. And that is in other markets where where electronic prescribing is a reality, like the UK and the US, the doctor would say, "Hey Dinesh, I'm going to write you a script today. I'm going to send it down, if I'm in America, I'm going to send it down to the local CVS and they'll have it ready for you when you get there." That's what we call a channeled model. So Dinesh doesn't actually have a choice of where he goes to get his medicine. If he's been banned from that pharmacy because he's behaved badly there in the past, which he probably has, then he's going to have trouble getting his medicine, or maybe the opening hours don't suit him or whatever, right? And some of the big corporate models in the US and to a lesser extent in the UK actually have commercial arrangements where they funnel scripts to particular pharmacies and then get rebates, which might sound appealing when you're sitting in kind of your clinic, but from a patient point of view, that's pretty rough. And so the Australian system is patient controlled, and there's two ways in which the patient can control who has access to their legal document, and that's either via a token. The analogy here is like your boarding pass. You know, when you go and you get a text message from Qantas saying your boarding pass is here, you click on a link and you bring up a QR code. That's essentially a token for your legal plane ticket that's sitting up there in the cloud. Same idea with your token for your prescription. The other one, which is far more compelling, and I'm going to go through the detail of these, but the other one that's far more compelling is what we call the active script list. And this requires patient consent to set it up. So they would need to receive a text message, accept some terms and conditions, and then they're up and away. But what that means is there's a service that aggregates a view of all of their active scripts in either Medisecure or eRx and shows them to either the pharmacy or the doctor of choice, so that they don't have to remember where their tokens are or lose tokens or remember what token goes with what. And the easiest way to understand why we would need an active script list model is thinking about if you've ever bought for a group of friends tickets to the football or tickets to a concert or something like that through Ticketek, and you might buy 5 tickets. You'll get 5 separate text messages, all with a little link in them, and then you'll maybe distribute one to each of your friends, but maybe you made a mistake. Maybe you sent the same text message to 2 friends, and then when they get to the gate, only one can get in because you're not sure which ticket goes with which person. Same sort of thing with the token model. So active script list means that doesn't become a problem, and you can actually clearly see what's what. So let's go through those models just to give you a better sense. So the token model essentially sends a key to the lock of your script to your mobile phone or to your email address or whatever. There's no patient consent required because it's an inferred consent model. The patient has said to the doctor, "Yep, I'll have an e-script please, not a paper legal script." And they've also then become into possession of the token, which they can then take to their pharmacy of choice. So there's inferred consent there. This is a model that's going to be useful for sort of casual users of medicines and potentially in the specialist setting where your doctors, say you work for a rheumatologist, they might be prescribing just a handful of molecules. It might be most people are walking out with the one script for Humira and that's kind of over and over again. Maybe the token model is a pretty good model for those patients where they just need a single script. But in the primary care setting or with some of your patients who maybe are on multiple medicines, the idea of getting a text message per script becomes more and more complicated, and we'll see that through the workflow. So if I take you through this, we're going to start off with the doctor, in your case a specialist clinic. When they come to the prescribing element of the consultation, they're going to ask the patient, would you like and this is just a mock-up screen, so obviously ZMed will look way better than this, but this will be, would you like a paper legal script or would you like an electronic script? In this case, we're going to choose an electronic script because that's that's what we want to do. The doctor then goes in and selects the items that they want to prescribe from the patient's history or however it is that you want to do that. And then it comes up with the delivery options. And remember, this is not delivering the legal script, because the legal script's getting sent up to the exchange. This is delivering to the patient a token for their legal script, or for each of their legal script items. In this case, we're going to reference back to the patient's profile within the system, and they've got a couple of things. They've got a SMS number, so they've got a mobile phone number recorded against their name. They've also got an email address recorded against their name. And if your doctors want to be particularly ironic, for the patient that says, I want to be really 21st century and get an electronic script, they can print them a paper token for their electronic script. The difference there is that paper token wouldn't be a legal document. It's simply something that is essentially an equivalent of a text message. So it doesn't get signed by the doctor, could be photocopied 50 times. You could chuck out 49 of those and take one of them to the pharmacy, and you'd be able to get access to your legal script. In this case, we're going to go with the SMS. Before the patient walks out of the clinic, they get an SMS to their phone, which looks something like this. So it would be please find your e-prescription from Dr. Blogs, and there's a little link there. Now you can see, because the doctor prescribed 2 items, there's 2 text messages, and this is what I was alluding to earlier with the multiple items becoming pretty quickly confusing. Because when they go and get this dispensed at the pharmacy, if there are repeats, they're also going to get text messages for the repeats as well. Anyway, we're going to click on one of those, and it brings up essentially a QR code and some limited information about the script. It's not enough to identify the patient, so if your doctors happen to have the wrong mobile phone number recorded against the patient's profile, it's not a privacy breach or anything like that. But essentially there's enough there for the patient, once they've clicked into each of those links, to work out what each of the tokens is for. So we've got our token. We're going to then traipse off to the pharmacy. Again, pharmacy of our choice. They'll scan it into their system, and this is a new process for pharmacy as well, so it's not the traditional little docket at the pharmacy. They'll scan it in at the back counter, record the details, they'll queue that up for dispensing, and this is not really your problem, but you'll see that that then pre-populates the dispensing system and is able to produce a label. So there's a couple of advantages there in that it's it's preventing any transcription errors, because the only way of the pharmacy kind of going up and getting the legal document is to go via this system. And the data that was put into the system was the data that was put in by your doctor. It wasn't somebody else typing it in and potentially making mistakes. So there's a significant safety benefit there. It does remove the paper, so that's a good thing, particularly I think in some specialist settings where the doctors want to be more mobile. You could, theoretically, depending on the software they use, start to generate some of these things using tablets and mobile devices. It can also be transmitted to others. So if you think about the scenario where a patient comes to see your clinic, is prescribed something, and maybe it is something that's quite debilitating for them. So rather than having to go from your clinic off to the pharmacy, wait in a queue and get their medicine, they could potentially just either, if it was a text message, forward that text message on to their wife or their husband or their carer to go and pick up on their behalf. There will likely be a range of kind of innovative models around delivery and so on. So there might be some places that they can forward their token and then have a delivery service deliver it to their home. So there's a range of benefits in that. A couple of the disadvantages around this, however, that we sort of seek to solve in this active scriptless model, is that you can still lose it. So you would have people probably ringing up your clinics today saying, I got an authority script last month and I now can't find it. I'm in a real pickle. We can't send away to the Tassie guys again. I now can't get my medicine, and suddenly it's your problem and it's the pharmacy's problem, because maybe the pharmacy's done an owing for you and you're all furiously trying to sort it out for that patient. Same thing can happen here. The only little upside here is that instead of having to recreate the legal document, if a patient loses a script, you can reissue a token. So in this case, you could say, okay, well, for a small fee, we can resend you your token, and out it goes to the patient. But I think the biggest disadvantage in this setting is that if I'm on more than 1 or 2 medicines or on regular medicines, this very quickly becomes pretty confusing, because I've got a big string of texts and some of them will be originals, some of them will be repeats, and it's very quickly overwhelming and kind of hard to work out what's going on. Which brings me to the active script list model. So just to reiterate what I sort of summarised earlier, this is an opt-in service, so people don't have to do it. It's a service that will be operated, and it's a commercial service, not that the prescribers or the patients or the pharmacies pay for it, but it's a commercial service that is run by the two prescription exchanges. Therefore, they have to accept some terms and conditions because we're aggregating a view of their active scripts. But what it does is provide, with patient consent, a view to the pharmacy of choice or the doctor of choice, a list of kind of the active scripts that that patient has. It's not, and this is really important, it's not the patient's medication profile. So if I don't have if I'm on 3 items, I've only got active scripts for 2 of them, only 2 items show in my active script list. So it doesn't replace what your doctors do around medication profile. It simply means that the nice old lady that comes in to see your doctors with a handbag full of scripts, and you say, oh, what scripts do you need today? And she rifles through and is all confused. She's got duplicates and all sorts of stuff going on. Your doctors will be able to say, I'm going to have a look at your active script list and compare that to the medication profile that they have for that patient, and therefore see that, oh, okay, well, she's run out of her Ramipril today and she's run out of her Humira. I need to re-prescribe those 2 items, but I can see she's got her other 3 items. She's still got repeats there, so we'll be okay. And that alludes to the other key benefit, which is that it gives your doctors, particularly in a specialist setting where often they have limited visibility over what the GPs are doing, it will give them a view of not the whole medication profile, but it'll at least tell them what are the active scripts does this patient have from their GP. And in most cases, people would have active scripts for most of the medicines they're on. So it gives them a bit of a head start when it comes to understanding, okay, well, what are the other things that this patient's taking that I might need to know about when I'm treating. And it can't be lost. That's the other thing. So all of those things where you get the patient or the pharmacy ringing up saying we need a new authority script because we lost it or the patient lost it or something's happened, all of that goes away. And it starts to become one unified place where both the patient's GP, their specialists, as well as their pharmacy or pharmacies of choice can all see what's going on with respect to their medicines. Making sense? Good. So I'll talk you through this. Now we're going to start this active script list kind of process in a pharmacy setting. I can't imagine that this will happen very often, but it could happen in a specialist setting. I'd suggest that if you think about where people will mostly initiate this sort of a thing, it'll be pharmacy number 1, because pharmacies have an interest in organising people's scripts, so they'll probably do it first. GPs will probably do it a little bit. I'd say the odd specialist might want to get access, but the access process is very similar to the setup process. So in this case, we're going to do an assisted registration. You'll see in this picture here, this is the dispensing system, but it could equally be a prescribing system. There's a little greyed out button or blacked out button there that says this patient doesn't yet have an active script list or they haven't consented to the model. And so we're going to hit that and do what we call an assisted registration. This would simply be a screen that came up in ZMed that said, hey, Dinesh wants to subscribe or to opt in to the active script list model, and this is a process by which we're just checking the data in the system is right for him. So we check we've got the right Medicare number, right mobile phone number, all that sort of stuff. And once we hit submit, we go to Dinesh's phone and it brings up a text message similar to the token model actually, but in this case it's not a token for a script, it's a message that says, James's Amcal Pharmacy would like to access or set you up for an active script list and gain access to it. I can view the terms and conditions for the service there, and all the data kind of governance and all that sort of stuff is covered in there. And to be clear, none of this data is sold to pharma companies or anything, or insurers or anything like that. This is very much its sole purpose and governed by all of the federal privacy laws. But then I can say either 1 for yes, so if I reply yes, that pharmacy then, or that specialist or that GP has ongoing access to my active script list until I withdraw it, if I want to withdraw it. Or I can give temporary access. So this would be good for one of your patients that heads up to Queensland for a holiday, forgets to take their authority script with them and needs to give access to the local pharmacy up on the Gold Coast to dispense that one item, but they don't really want that pharmacy having ongoing access to all of their scripts. So it lets them just do a one-off. Or if I don't reply, or if I say number 3, then nothing happens. I don't consent to the service. In this case, we consented to the service because it's a demo, and of course we would. And then the pharmacy can go in, and this is essentially bringing up a list of the patient's active scripts. And just as a doctor would to prescribe, they can select the items that they want to dispense and then produce the labels from there. And it goes to the same process as we had before, noting there that the little button in the top right-hand corner has gone green. So we've got ongoing access to that patient's medicines when they need it. I've sort of alluded to this kind of urgent supply one, which is the idea that a patient's up in Queensland, needs their medicine. Doesn't have to be Queensland, there are other holiday destinations they could go to, but it's that bit of flexibility that you get out of the active script list. It's like a lot of your patients that would have either the big wad of scripts in their handbag or the big wad of scripts in the drawer at the pharmacy. This is just making that electronic and making it more flexible. So just like the token model, it's going to get rid of the paper. Importantly, particularly for you guys who are writing authority scripts, they can't lose their script again. So the issues you have with Medicare and trying to reissue authorities and cancel old ones, all that sort of stuff are going to disappear. It's easier for patients, so they don't have to worry about all these token things. So you would expect that maybe they might actually take their medicine as directed. And I'm sure all of you in this room know that patients don't take their medicine as directed. In fact, average is, maybe half the time they might take it properly, even for the high cost drugs. And I know some people think, oh, it's so expensive, of course you would take it. But as a pharmacist, I see it every day. People don't take it as directed. It works with and without patient apps. So if people want to use apps in future, they can use that to manage their active script list, but they don't have to. So even the elderly technophobe patient that doesn't want anything to do with any sort of internet or anything like that, they've got a mobile phone, they can still consent into the service and just provide access to their preferred local pharmacy and their preferred GP and their preferred specialist. And they can then manage their medicines essentially on their behalf. And this is probably less relevant in the specialist setting because you're only doing a small number of prescribed lines, but there is no SMS cost associated with this model, whereas with the token model, as you would imagine, to send a token to a patient actually costs you a few cents per SMS to do that. The other thing that's probably relevant in your setting here is, and this goes for both token scripts and electronic active script list patients. Once you initiate a patient on a paper legal script, you can't stop that medicine. So even if you said to the patient, hey, I want you to stop taking that one and start taking this one, that relies on them either tearing up the prescription or the pharmacist tearing up the prescription or you tearing up the prescription. In the electronic world, the doctor can either cease a medicine, which is they've already had one or two repeats on this script, but I don't want them to take it anymore, so I'm going to actually reach into the system and put a stop to it, and therefore make sure that they're not taking two sort of like medicines at the same time. Or the other thing they can do with an electronic script is to cancel it. So if a patient walked out of the clinic and the doctor half an hour later over lunch realised, oh my goodness, I've accidentally prescribed that person the wrong thing, before they've had it dispensed, they can cancel that script and obviously contact the patient, do all the right stuff, but they can reach out into the ether and grab that script and pull it back if they wanted to do that. So there's a couple of clinical features there that are quite beneficial over and above that view of the patient's medicine. So that's kind of it for e-prescribing. Dinesh is going to talk a lot more about eRx, and I noted that there wasn't a huge kind of prevalence of people using it today, so Dinesh will sort of talk about how that works. But are there any questions on the e-prescribing stuff? Yeah?
Does that mean another doctor can cancel something that another doctor's?
That's a very good question. No. So the cancel function is just for the doctor that wrote the script. If you wanted to cease it and you were at the same clinic, there may be a way to cease it if you're another doctor in the same clinic treating the same patient. But yeah, the cancel is very much just for that doctor. Yeah.
I just had a question about the process. You talked about it being initiated at the pharmacist. Can it be initiated at the doctor?
Definitely. Yeah.
And presumably somebody's going to talk about that process, or is that exactly the same?
Exactly the same process. So the reason I was talking about, yes, once you do need eRx to do this, and incidentally, you need eRx for real-time prescription monitoring, like SafeScript and so on anyway. But the initiation process we think is generally more likely to happen in pharmacy just because they've got a bigger commercial interest in doing it. Having said that, the process in the doctor setting is exactly the same. So the clinical system you can still offer a patient paper or electronic, or you could say as a clinic, look, you know what, we're moving to electronic. We've still got to be able to give the patients a choice if they really want a paper one, but we're going to give most people electronic scripts. And then you either in the kind of the admin functions within the clinic could be opting people into the active script list if that's the way you thought was a good way to manage the medicines. Equally, you could just be giving them tokens.
Could I ask another question? You said that if the pharmacy activates it, we get a message. Where does that go?
So the patient gets a message. So if we're talking about the active script list model, if I said, hey Dinesh, you got a token from the specialist today, which is it's a good start, but how about we make it easier for you to manage your repeats? We'll get you onto this active script list model. That text message to consent Dinesh into the service goes to Dinesh's phone, and that's the phone number that's recorded against his profile in the clinical system in the pharmacy. He consents, and then the pharmacy has access. When he goes to the specialist again for the next consultation, you can hear over that. When he goes to the next consultation, instead of it being a blacked out button inside ZMed, and this is, Natalie and the team will work out way better ways of doing this, but it will show that Dinesh has an active script list, but you won't have access to it until the patient gives you access. And so there would be a process then at the physician to say, okay, well, Dinesh, I can see you have an active script list. Obviously, either your GP or your pharmacy has consented you for that service. I'd quite like to have a look at it because then I can understand what medicines you've got scripts for. And that's as simple as send another SMS from ZMed. That goes off to the patient. They say, yes, ongoing, and then you can view the active script list. Importantly though, you don't have to have access to Dinesh's active script list in order to prescribe to him electronically.
Sorry, I'm a little bit confused because you said when the pharmacy sets it up, there would be a message through to ZMed to check the details.
No, so if the pharmacy sets it up, that references the data inside the pharmacy clinical system, like Fred Dispense or a range of other products. If the doctor sets it up and they've got ZMed, that references the data inside there. Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Does it have to be the doctor?
No, it doesn't. No. Obviously, the consent has to be articulated to the patient so they know actually what's going on. But
Make it part of your patient registration.
Absolutely. Yeah. So some of the things you might want to be thinking about now are, and I'm sure you've got this far more ingrained than some other channels like pharmacy have today, but making sure you've got up-to-date mobile phone numbers, if you want to do email addresses, doing those sorts of things, so that the information's there when you want to start doing these sorts of things. Yeah.
What's the time frame? Sorry.
That's a very good question. The time frame is, there's a range of things that are impacting it at the moment. There's a few things from a legislative point of view. Federally, there's a couple of things, and then each state has their own little nuances that we're working with them on. The other element is the ZMed team are working with us at the moment to work out when this functionality will be available. It's not going to be tomorrow, but it will likely be kind of within the calendar year, I would think. Natalie's nodding, so that's a good sign. I think for some of your clinics this will be really compelling. For other settings it's probably less compelling, but it's an option.
Is there a cost to it, and any rebates associated with the cost?
So the only cost with the system as such is if you choose to send a token, then there may be a cost of an SMS. I'd probably defer to the ZMed team with regard to functionality and how your pricing, all that sort of stuff works. But from a national system point of view, there's not a cost to people from that perspective other than the SMS cost. Is that a reasonable answer, guys? Yeah, good.
Yeah.
It's free. It's free. All right, I might hand over to Dinesh, but yeah, if you think of any questions, I'll be around as well.
So we do get this question from both doctors and pharmacies, why eRx? So the doctors reckons it's good for pharmacies because it's a process improvement tool, easy dispensing, and the pharmacist reckons it's good for doctors because safety for patients. Yeah, it's all about patient safety, because this study, which was done by Deloitte in 2008, claims that 10% of hospital admissions for elderlies are due to adverse drug events, and preventable medication prescribing errors costing the Australian government 380 million each year. So that's why the funding part of it to upkeep this program, which is called 6CPA Pharmacy Agreement. That's why it's free for doctors and for your patients. So it's fully integrated, supported and free, and it's part of your software, which is SedMed. There's no change to your doctor's workflow. You could generate the script as usual. So once activated, it just puts an additional barcode in your script. And it's, as James explained, it's path to paperless script. And most importantly, it's free. And you may have privacy and security concerns around eRx. So it's independently audited under the Privacy Act 1988, part of e-authentication framework. It's compliant to medical in confidence system, and eRx does not collect or monitor prescribing or patient history, and we don't sell any of those information to any of the third parties. So the best analogy that I could think of is eRx acts as a postman in this whole prescription exchange service. So we don't open any of those information because it's fully encrypted. We just pass the information from the doctor system to the pharmacy. So how does it work? Once activated, when the doctor prints the script, it comes up with a barcode and it sends the e-script to the secure exchange. When patient takes the script to the pharmacy, when they scan it, it downloads this e-script safely and securely, and then they dispense it with no manual interference, because pharmacies no longer have to type in any of the information into their system, which prevents all these medical errors. So this is how the script looks like once it's activated. It puts a little QR code on the top, and the main barcode sits in the bottom. So activating eRx takes less than 1 minute, because you just have to register your doctors on our website, and we set it up through SedMed team. We create the background or the back office information, pass it to SedMed guys, and they call up and install it for you. Yeah, so you could either register them online, which is www.erx.com.au, or you can send us the details, which is the full name of the doctor and the prescriber number with your contact details to support@erx.com.au.